Introducing everybody this year. I've been trying to kind of recall back to when I first met them, and Donald and I, 2 years ago at LFTN. It seems like it was way longer than that ago, but 3 LFTNs ago, and we ended up kind of bonding, both being rather small dudes. So we commiserated over, not being able to reach things on the top shelf, and airplane seats being way too big for us. That was always been our issue. So, but we really hit it off, and we've kept in contact a hell of a lot. And I really do treat you, think of you as a brother from another mother.
And you do treat me like one too.
Yeah, I try my best. So. But this dude,
I'm saucy, hit me.
I give you a noogie, but I give you a skin burn. So you're talking about, tell them exactly what your presentation today is. Going to get in your mind right.
So,
sit down.
What good is this community without having proper mindset? Couple of rules, and let me get some stuff out there. I'm going to give you the PG-13 version because I don't know who's streaming. I don't know who's on there watching with mom or dad. I'm rather politically incorrect. I'm going to try to keep it down to one bleep if I slip. A lot of the stuff I tell you, I'm going to be very general. If you want specifics and stories, find me after the session. For anyone who's streaming right now, you can reach out to Nicole, and I will happily have a phone call with you. Or if we're an event like this, we can have a one-on-one conversation. I have no problem showing the personal accounts person to person. Okay. So, how many of you have bullets and beans? I was gonna say, if I don't see your hands go up, fix yourself. Okay. All right. But what good is that? Because we have bullets and beans, we need 2 more things to go with that: physical ability, and that's limited based on past medical history, injuries, but you can usually work around that. If any of you have ever taken a TAC response class, they can find a way to teach you how to run a pistol or a firearm around whatever's impairing you, okay? But then what good is all of that if you don't have proper mindset, a good mental attitude picture, and everything that goes with that? One of the things that kind of kills people in EMS, we are so used to taking care of other people, we neglect ourselves. I'm going to give you 3 stories that are relatively quick that illustrate this. I had one patient in the back of my ambulance, and we're talking, and I'm transporting her from an ER to a psych facility, a mental institution. She had been battling mental illness for, at that time, 3 years when I was transporting her. And this was at the height of the vid. So everything was all weird. It's hospitals, doctors, and we're talking. And it's like, so how long have you been suffering with this? Well, 3 years. Yeah, what brought it on? I want to talk about it. I didn't push it. It's one of those things. Some of the times, some of the best things you can do for a patient like that is just sit, listen, and be present with them. So we had a 40-minute drive, and finally she opened up. And it's like, yeah, 3 years ago I was in a horrible car accident. I'm like, really? I'm thinking, you look fine. Why are we going to a mental institution? She saw her best friend, childhood best friend, get decapitated in that. Wow. Yeah. So that's one of those, like, she recants a story, and now this is buried in my head. And it's like, wow, she's been living with that for 3 years. And when she gave me more of the backstory, it's like she's been in and out of hospitals, tried every different medication and dosage, talk therapy, psychiatrist, and somehow she finds a way to wake up every day and function. Some days better than others. That's just her story. Another one, young man, girlfriend broke up with him, and it was the love of his life. I also didn't mention he's 20, so the love of his life, I digress. But at that time, that was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And he wanted to commit suicide. He didn't want to be on this world at that time anymore. And we had a 20-minute drive from where we were to the hospital. And he's calm, he's compliant. Anytime you're dealing with a patient that's threatening to harm themselves, anything in between, we take that seriously. Because it's the one time you let your guard down, you'll be driving 80 miles an hour on the expressway and then jump out and get hit by a Mack truck. Okay, so if he didn't want to be here anymore, I was sure to sit with this guy and pay attention to everything he did, everything he said, but still treat him and be polite. We pull up to the hospital, and it's one of those where I was sitting with him in the back. My partner at this time leaves to go into the ER because we, based on a little bit of what he was trying to do, we wanted public safety security to escort us in. It's like, okay. So I'm sitting with him alone. I'm a big guy, but size doesn't matter. David and Goliath, right? And he says something to me, and just all the red flags go up. I wish I would have gone about this differently. Excuse me? And I'm waiting for him to grab something, do something. It's like, what do you mean? As I'm about ready to draw up ketamine, give him a little night-night. He says, I wish I would have gone about this differently. Elaborate. Well, it's Saturday. Sunday, the doctor isn't open. I wish I would have waited till Monday and called my insurance and saw what was in network. I'm like, okay, no kidding. It's like, you're just worried about the bill. I'm good with that. Too late now. So it's like, you have the first person that's living with that after a tragedy. You have him that acknowledges, I have a problem and I want to get it addressed. And then the third story, this one just out of the blue. Sometimes when things happen to people or they do things, we just don't know why. And that's going to drive you nuts. It was this last Thanksgiving. Dad walks downstairs and it's like, I'm going to pull out the deep fryer from the garage. I'm going to deep fry a turkey. So he knows his son's keys are still on the little key rack in the kitchen. He's thinking, well, it's Thanksgiving. Maybe my son, called in, didn't want to go to work. 18, he's working at a Jimmy John's. So it's a job. So as he goes to open the door, he notices that the door won't open. So he's a pretty big guy, and he says he gives it a hard shove, and then he sees a ladder on the ground. It's like, what the hell's up with this ladder? He found his son hung himself. Yeah. Okay. First two people had issues and wanted to get them solved. When he walked in on Thanksgiving Day, he saw his son no longer with us. And it really hit him hard. Did I mention that was my brother-in-law, my nephew?
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the part that really drives it home and just kind of makes you wonder, like, I deal with these kind of patients all day in every way, shape, or form. But when it's someone you love, and part of your family, I don't care all the training in the world. It just hits you sideways. And then the worst part was no one got any answers on why. Police were called on scene, went through his social media, went through his phone, went through all his personal belongings. There were no signs of no online bullying, no this, that, or the other. It's just 18, and I think we can all remember that age. How many of you would want to be 18 again?
No way.
You're as long as Dick Cancer, so stay James Jager. I would never want to go back to that age. That was just a horrible time, I think, for everybody. And then fast forward. Think of the responders that have to go to those scenes, and think of you if you had any of those people in your cadre. Here we're all talking about close-knit family. What happens when a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning phone call, happens to go out tactical, Tim, Nicole, Ed. I just got off the scene and off work of a really just pediatrics will mess you up. And then dealing with the Thanksgiving thing, the bad call happened first. Fast forward, my nephew did his thing. And it's like, this is all starting to build up on me. Like every day you're running calls. Every day I'm teaching class. And then one of the hard things was I teach class and run an ambulance. But in class, you always get that jackass student. And I'll say it again, that jackass student. What's the worst thing you've ever seen? That's a very loaded question asking any kind of first responder, because I'm going to say we're all adults here. To them, between 18 and 25, they're still wet behind the ears. When those students or individuals ask that, it's going to be more of, well, I'm replaying it in my head, and now I'm living it, but I'm not going to tell you. And then they get a little upset and throw a temper tantrum. But then I'll usually tell them a fun call and like back off. But then you got to live with that. It's like, you just made me live that. So teaching classes, always on take 1 or 2, students comes like, Don, what's the worst call you ever been in? Thanks. I wait till after class and I go, oh, my bottom right drawer soon. My name is Don and I'm an alcoholic. Okay. So all of that stuff started to compile on me, and I started turning to the bottle to take care of it. Okay. I got to the point where I would be teaching classes for students, and I'm more concerned about going back into my office and getting that bottle of rum that's on my desk. I would lock my office and my coworker, and we're very close knit. He knew anytime I go to the vending machine, if I came back with a Coke, don't ask questions. Go disappear. Shoot me a message if the general manager's coming. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but that's what we deal with mental health, how we cope. It got to the point where it was so bad. I was in my office and I'm flushed and rosy cheeked. We had nurses, paramedics come in from a hospital in the another garage that was at my company, and we're teaching a CPR class. I walk out and it's like, I got this. I got this. CPR, high quality CPR. And I'm scanning the room like I'm doing right now. And I see a nurse from a hospital close to where I work. And he's flushed in the face and he's holding a big styrofoam cup. It's like, I see you. You can spot that a mile away once you're actually into it. So it was okay until it wasn't okay. I was able to, well, I'll drink after work. Cool. 6 beers, 24 beers, a bottle. I'm tipping the bartender, and it's one of those, like, they're my friends until the money runs out. And it's like, how do you handle that? So then it would start, all right, this is going to be a tough day. I'm going to go into work. And at this time, the only saving grace, I was teaching at this time. I'm not running any calls. Things just lined up where I didn't have that against me, because I'm really afraid that I might have killed somebody. I really might have. And then I'm teaching these classes, and it got to the point where the passion wasn't into it. I was more worried about class ends at 3:00, 3:15, locked door, 15-minute break, drink for my bottle. And then it got to the point where it's like, I'm having a really bad day. It's like, I got my rum in my office. I got to replenish that at the local grocery store. But I got my emergency bottle of tequila in the trunk. Good times. Bottle starts drinking from you. You don't drink from the bottle. Okay. And it's one of those things where, what do I do to handle it? Back up a little bit. After that bad call I went on, I called Tim, Nicole, Tactical, Ed, and I think I might have called you too. Like, it's like anybody that was, and that was right after LFTN 2022. I grew it through my roster. It's like, I'm calling, I'm texting. Tactical was the first one to call me back. And then it was, Carrie. Carrie called me back shortly after that. And those bastards talked me off a ledge. That was one of those scary times where saw something horrible with a pediatric patient. In my head, I'm sitting on the balcony of my apartment. My wife is dead asleep. I don't want her to see this. So I reach out to the community, right? That's why I said in my little 5-minute intro, I have family here. I have relatives at home. And it's one of those, it's kind of sad when you have to call people in other states and international borders for help, because my relatives at home, they're the, how is it? It must be nice. We're here. Good for you. Okay. And then once I deal with that, once I start getting myself cleaned up a little bit, like Jenny was talking about in her talk, I had to learn to say no to certain things. And when I started saying no and not yes, you really see who's who. It would always be the people who will call me up. Hey, Don, can you do this or help me? Yeah, absolutely. Drop everything for you. But then when I started saying no, people saw, Don, you've changed. I'm like, how so? Well, you're being a little selfish. Excuse me? It's like, you're the ones that were pissed I called at 3:00 in the morning, but people from another state, no. In fact, a couple were like, we're so sorry we couldn't get back to you. It was the next morning as I'm nursing my hangover and dealing with the call from the previous night that Nicole calls me up. How you doing? It's like, holy shit. I just met this woman and I'm at my first LFTN and she calls me back the following day. That says something right there. So as I really start drinking from the bottle, it drinks from me. I was boozing and partying like a rock star. And it was a very scary and interesting time. The entire time I'm doing this, I'm teaching students, I'm teaching class, and this is the biggest joke in the world. The book that we use, there's one chapter, Health and Wellness of the EMT. Oh boy. You want to talk about facades and phoniness. It's like, all right, class, when you're feeling stressed, here's what you need to do. When this is happening, you need to go do this. Is I'm already thinking, 2 ounces red Solo cup, and I'll get a Coke after this. Okay. And then it's when you have a horrible call, you call this number here. This is crisis, man. Whatever. It's like, okay. And then that's the chapter where it's always that one student. What's the worst thing you've ever seen? Well, shit. Okay. And then it's twofer. I'm teaching these kids how to handle things correctly, but my partner in the office will lock the door and cover for me for 15 minutes so I can have a little sip. And I'm telling these kids, don't become dependent on insert substance here. And I'm doing it myself. Okay. Students have no idea about the demons and troubles I'm going through. And they're all just between 18 and 25 looking to run calls, be on an ambulance. I'm like, you really don't. You really don't. And I would never elaborate. So I had a couple of students like, it just doesn't make sense. And then the part that really screwed me up and why I was in denial for so long until it got really bad. Pathophysiology, essentially understanding how the body works and all the functions. Like, I understood that I drink and that process and gets filtered through my liver, and the hangover and the headaches the next morning because of vasoconstriction and and it's like, well, pickle juice doesn't actually work, and hair of the dog is an absolute myth. Pound water and electrolytes. And it's like, well, not like the patients I'm transporting are going through withdrawals and the DTs. That's not me. I just drink casually, a little heavier than sometimes. Denial. Okay. That was a big one for me. And then once we get going through that, it's not till I finally recognize there's a problem here. What am I going to do to fix this? Now, let me go to the bar, get a drink, and think of this over. No bullshit on that. Went to my local watering hole. It's like, I'll take an Italian beef, curly fries, and let me start out with here's my preferences. If I'm out drinking with the guys, like, we get buckets of Modelo, we're going to knock those back. If I'm by myself, shot of Jack Daniels with either MGD, High Life, or insert fancy domestic. And that was another part of it too. It's like, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a connoisseur. That's why we have, fancy bottles of Goose Island. So as I figure out my problems, I start going to AA meetings. And I'm talking to people in this tribe here. And it's one of those, good for you. But here's the problem I found with AA meetings. Now, I will not talk bad about AA because there are a lot of people it has helped and keeps them on the straight and narrow. One of the things I learned from it is you got to create your own program. So part of my program was actually breaking off and getting away from them. I found two categories of the meetings I was going to where everything just it turned into, woe is me, I'm forever an alcoholic and a victim. Well, that doesn't work for me. I want to get back to baseline, as close to baseline as possible, and be able to function again like old Don. And then it turned into, I found other meetings where it's like, oh, you're a baby drunken alcoholic. You haven't hit rock bottom yet. My first sponsor, he walked me through the 12 steps. He was knowledgeable and he lived it. 15 years he described it like this. He was drinking heavy every day, and it got to the point where his wife didn't divorce him. His wife stayed with him, but he lived upstairs and she lived downstairs. She gave him the ultimatum. It's like, until you fix yourself, I'm not going to deal with you. So he would tell the story of how he would go up after work, and eventually it affected his work. And he would get the handle of the cheapest turpentine you could get from the liquor store and go upstairs and drink his life away. He's curled up in a blanket, throwing up his guts, and he's still taking another sip. That was my first sponsor. He taught me a lot, but at the same time, he was very condescending. And it's like, you're teaching me the steps, but because I haven't been as bad as you, I'm not there yet. Okay, that doesn't sit well with me. And then the other meetings where it turns into, I'm a forever victim, and I'm going to whine and cry about it. Yeah, that didn't work for me either.
Thank you, sir.
Then my wife's uncle, 41 years sober. So I started talking to him, and some of his things and purviews they didn't really line up with me. The one thing that stuck with me is like work the 12 steps, and then work my program. So I started going in between looking at Alcoholics Anonymous, trying to figure out what an alcoholic is, what binge drinking is, what drinking is, just trying to figure out this whole mystery of drinking alcohol, beer, spirits, wine. And there's so much misinformation, but depending on the article you read, the video you pull up, it's all over the place. So trying to figure out my program, my path to get myself back to baseline, it's one of those where it was uphill more than most. Some people would go and fall back 110% on the program, like my first sponsor. Good for him. That man at that point was 15 months sober. Good for him. But the way he handled it wasn't going to work for me. So it's one of those, here I am in Illinois, and I'm trying all these alcohol AA programs, and I can't find a sponsor, but go figure. I find a sponsor in another continent across a son of a bitch. Oh, yeah, you.
Oh,
You.
I love you.
So we never agreed on it, but it was one of those like,
Yeah, man.
when I told you everything that was going on, you didn't judge me, you listened, but it was just enough where it's like, look, well, here's my one bleep. Look, fucker, without saying that. Went on his podcast and told a more abridged version of this. And it was one of those where at the end, we get off and we're just talking. And then you, they had the gall to ask me, am I still sober? And it's like, I paused for a minute. I'm like, how dare they? But the answer was yes.
Yeah, I know it was.
And so that right then and there turned into, that son of a bitch. I'm going to show his ass when I get to LFTN. And that's just it. It's the motivation where 1 day at a time is absolutely real. 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. I was so afraid because I gave Nicole my last fancy bottle of insert here. It's like, this is for you. I had those 2 bottles of Bourbon County I traded last night. Those were the last of my stock. According to people in AA, it's like you got to dump down everything. $100 bottle of Jack Daniels and a $23.99 bottle of Bourbon County. It's like, I'd rather give those to people that I can connect with and supporting me through my time. And at the same time, I'm still getting rid of my demons. Just part of that support structure. So Tim checks up on me, I'd say every couple weeks, and I'll reach out to him on the opposite weeks and just, it's like, hey, doing this, doing well, still sober. And then it's one of those, like, when the urge to drink came back, you free for a phone call. Did you ever have to drop anything? Because
I mean, I just made time when I could. I know the first night you called, I missed the call and didn't call you till like a day later. But I know I assembling furniture one day and I just went out and sat the fuck in the car and talked to you. And I never feel like I do anything good, but
no, it's just for me in my program, it's just accountability. Like my original sponsor, I could drive 20 minutes and be to his house. And as long as I went ahead and I met with him every Tuesday at 7:00, things were copacetic. But when I would need to deviate, it's like, hey, I'm at work late. You'd think we could meet here in my office like 7:15. No. I got to go to you. You can't meet me halfway. But a man in another goddamn country, we're not meeting at the border. I've asked, you always say no. I'm the one that's addicted. And if it seems like I'm deflecting, part of my program and recovery is joking about it. I kind of held off the first couple of nights and days we're here talking about it because I knew I was going to be here. Now from this point on, you're going to hear me crack so many jokes about alcoholism and drunk and all of that, because that's part of healing and part of becoming better. My sponsor from another country, I can call him up just about any time he picks up. And I know I'm going to see him at least once a year in an event like this, or twice or 3 times a year, depending on how our calendars match. Like, my sponsor won't come to me, but a man from another country, I can meet him somewhere and we can sit and talk. It's just interesting, the process of recovery. How does that tie to mental health? There's no definitive answer for that. It's one of those where every day is a struggle and other days are fun. Like the first night I'm here, I cut out at 8 o'clock. Told this man and told Nicole, it's like, nah, I'm not going to stick around for the libations. And if you notice, I don't get here typically till after 10. Well, I found a meeting on my way from the hotel to here. It's like, I don't really participate in AA anymore, but it's like, let's just fall back on the roots of what kind of work and got you on the right path. So this meeting, it seems pretty good. Been there the past 3 days to keep everything straight and on the correct path. And then by doing all that, I'm now able to sit, joke with you. We sat for probably 2 hours just shooting the shit. That was 3 bleeps. Damn. Just talking, joking, and Ed, you in here? Where you at? Ed, he's also fellow alumni. He was part of that, and he knows. And we're just talking. And I know people are drinking. I think you were a little tipsy last night. What's your shoe size? Yeah. Moving on. I now have the foundation where I can cross 3 state lines and have 3 bottles of alcohol in my car because I know I'm going to give them to somebody else. I have no urge to crack them. And it's one of those too, listening to all the different talkers here. My biggest stressor right now is I need to make a career change. And I just got to find a way for it to be a little smoother than abandoning my one position. Once I do that, a lot of the stress will be removed. And everything that kind of ties to that, I'll take that one day at a time as that happens, and then more I'm in the classroom. I'm never going to give that up. And it feels good to come correct for these kids. And I don't open up as much as I do in a group like this. When they ask about addiction and patients like that, hey, why don't you go look up this guy, Toolman Tim Cook, and type my name in with that if you really want to know. Because it's just one of those boundaries as a student. I'll tell them about patients, and even I'll pretend to be a patient and tell them some stories, but they don't know it's me. It's not till after they graduate they get the unfiltered version of what I'm talking about here today. And then it's like, we had no idea. No one ever does. Okay. It got to the point when I was drinking, in the middle of winter, minus 20 degrees, somewhere in there. It's like, how do I keep my beer from freezing? So here's the hack. I told you I'm going to joke like a son of a bitch now. 4 bleeps.
Come on, that don't even count.
I remember Jack on a podcast. It's like, if you take a hand warmer and you put it in a bucket, it seals out. It seals the bucket. What if I take a hard side plastic cooler? I put my beer in there, still cold, and I put the hand warmer in there. Figured it out. An alcoholic to get their fix knows a lot of things when it comes to getting it. Stop, you rat bastard.
Sugar-free, I'd say.
See, and this is part of the joking. It's turned into, that's a coping mechanism now. If I'm having a really hard day at the office, that same guy that would cover for me, if he just sees me, he'll do it. Are you okay, Don? Yeah, I'm good. But it's just one of those where it's like, yeah, well, let me just, why don't you go to lunch? Okay. Yeah, we're good. Being able to joke with that, that is actually warm in my pocket. We're going to give that back to you. Jesus. Just part of my program, getting better and talking about it. Students graduate, become EMTs. Then we can talk about it because we're no longer student instructor. We're now coworkers. We're now at the same level. So that was my story in a nutshell. What I like to do in my classes is do anyone know what a round robin is? Okay. Questions, comments, concerns. I'll go to each and every one of you because that's just my thing. It starts out like this. Round robins, I love them, you hate them. with round robins in my class, the first one, like first day of class, you're allowed to pass. But after that, no, you are participating. So formulate your questions, comments, or concerns right now. The only rule I have is I do not want an attaboy, good for you, proud of you, thank you, or any of that crap. Okay? Because up here, oh yeah, this is all selfishness in my program. This keeps me on the straight and narrow. What I do ask is if you take anything from this or you're dealing with anything yourself, maybe my story or what I'm going through can help you or someone you know. And if it's one of those, you want to go ahead and put them in touch with me. I'm still baby sober. I got a long way to go. But I've been, and this is one of the things I kind of went away from. My wife's uncle, my uncle, he said, in your big book, put the date you've been sober since. He's like, and don't look at it. So I don't even know how many days. So if I could get one person to start counting the days from January 1st, 2024, that's the exact amount of days I've been sober. So round robin time, I love them, you hate them, Rebecca.
Okay, I do have a comment though. When you had called Tim when he was putting together the furniture and he went out, he was at the new daycare. And as he was going out the door, about to call you back, I hollered to him, I said, you better make sure you ask him if he's still sober.
That's why I went to you first.
Yeah. Because I hollered at him and I said, you better make sure. And he come back in and I said, well, and it's the first thing he told me.
What do you got for me, Tim?
I know you don't want to proud of you or anything like that.
You better not.
No, but
I got a spear.
I love you.
Love you too, Tim.
But yeah, how much weight have you lost?
4 months ago, I was at 360.
117 days.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Number.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll wait till 118. And then when 118 hits, it's like, I'll wait till 119. That's kind of how I get through it too. I went from 4 months ago, 360. Now I'm down to 346.
Feeling good?
Better. I caught myself slipping on the diet side.
Sure, I get it.
Sure.
Have you been able to apply what you learned from your experience of sobriety to other areas in your life that you may be still working on? Because generally speaking, people with alcohol problems or any other kind of substance abuse have an addictive personality.
110%.
So what else are you working on that you haven't yet mastered?
Saying no. And then I think the biggest one that comes to mind right now is, I know when we talked a while ago, it's like worry about sobriety, but I want to be healthy. It was a month ago, no, about a month and a half. I ended up in the ER because I'm sitting at my work and it's like, why do I see 4 of you, Craig? Why do I feel off right now? Turns out I'm type 2 diabetic. And this community, we know how to fix that. Eat better, dumbass. Well, I think we're on bleep number 6. I apologize, but I really don't. Because I noticed when I was no longer drinking from the bottle, I started going through the McDonald's drive-thru. It's like, let me get the number 1 medium Coke. Yeah, maybe I supplement with an apple pie. I noticed that picked up. When I was talking to that group of old timers that got 40 plus years, 30 plus years, they're like, keep a pocket full of candy. And it's like, anytime you get the urge, pop that candy. And something about alcohol metabolizes, turns to sugar. It's like, it's a way to counteract it. So for me, the immediate one is getting my diet under control and getting back to eating correctly. There's some other ones too, because I noticed, like, yeah, you swung to a whole nother thing. Nothing detrimental, but
Yes.
not sauce.
Thank you for the presentation. That's not an attaboy. From a selfish point of view, I've been very worried because you've been dead white in the face and have no affect. And you got in here and I saw Donald Young again, so
Yep.
I promise not to cry right now. But you have a healthy color in your
Yeah,
face,
you do.
not a flush.
For a while there, it was starting to get hinky. I was going through the process of just wake up, put on my shoes, go to work, jump on an ambulance, put on boots, go home, go to sleep. And the part I really didn't touch on is the toll it took on the wife. One of the harder parts there was she really didn't quite think. It's like, you're not an alcoholic because I'm not fitting the textbook definition, rock bottom. But then when she saw the bottle of tequila in the trunk and I told her some of the other stuff, she's like, okay, you just might be. What do I need to do to help you? Just like I said in the beginning of the presentation, just be a presence. I think to piggyback off that, one of the other hard things, not really addiction or, it is learning to ask for help. Because I am at my job, it's like everyone goes to me. In my personal life, when shit goes sideways, it's like I always do the lone wolf thing. It's like I figure out a way to make it work. Yet that doesn't work with alcohol. You need some support. You need some friends. You do all the work yourself, but you need a cadre of people behind you to make it last. Because I could go, when I would get tired of drinking, 3 weeks to 3 months, not a drop. And then, oh, you guys are graduating. Outstanding. Let's go to the bar. I got a place. And then it would start all over again. It was a vicious cycle. Okay.
We have an online question.
Please.
All right. Does Don know what kind of career he wants to change to, and has he found the support to help him in that change?
Yes, no, and other. Yes, no, and other. The transition is, well, the company I work for, it's a combination of, what is it, Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. It's, woo! So I got to figure out, am I pre-red wedding or post-red wedding? If you get the, so.
You got a spirit out.
Hmm?
You have a spirit out.
Ironically, I have a sword in that trunk too. No bullshit. When we're done here, if you want to see the sword, I'll pull it out. I can give that person a much better answer if they want to reach out and talk to me on a phone, a FaceTime. Yeah. I see we're running a little shorter on time. I love my. Go ahead. Yeah.
So there's a gentleman I follow on YouTube. He goes by the Carb Addiction Doc. And one of the things that he talks about, I mean, obviously his focus is on carb addiction, but he's always talking about diet, managing it through the lens of addiction. And one of the things that he likes to say is that when we turn to substances for when we develop an unhealthy relationship with substances, in other words, we have an addiction,
Yeah.
whether it's alcoholism or nicotine or, food, whatever the thing is, it's usually a symptom of us having an inadequate emotional management toolkit.
Correct.
So I am wondering, through your process, have you started to discover some other coping mechanisms, some other stress relieving activities, now that you're not going to the bottle?
Yes, everyone has character flaws. And it's one of those where I have to keep my emotions in check, because I'll be completely honest with you. Your statement actually pissed me off right now. And not in the bad way, because you're saying something that's truthful and I don't like it. Because it makes me reflect. It's like, son of a bitch. So thank you for that. And yes, you're 100% right in everything you just said. I'm working on the coping tools and then realizing that there's layers to why I was drinking, what I was doing. So I'm not mad at you. I get mad at myself when I hear that.
I just want to, because I support this group and I want everybody to be the best they can, I want to make sure that everybody realizes there is no such thing as a normal person. There's means and mediums across all the different spectrums of things that are involved in your life, but there is no person that is normal. So if you feel that you're strange in this way or that way, too aggressive, too passive, too loud, too quiet, afraid, outspoken, whatever you feel like, that's normal, because there's no such thing as normal. We're people, we're individuals, and we're all different, and we have our fortes and we have our weaknesses. And we all have a forte and we all have multiple weaknesses. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're worthless. We all have value, and many times we focus on something in this little gray thing up here, and we lose perspective on the picture. So if you think you're one thing or the other, reach out. This community can help each other.
I will keep that in mind when I need a hand warmer. What you got for me?
So you said before, now it sounds like teaching these young people is kind of a passion for you.
100%.
Passing on those skills. You also mentioned about the one chapter of how to cope. And since your struggles and what you're dealing with for mental health, have you in your classes adapted and called bullshit on it, or provided more insight to the young people to give them a little bit what to expect? To be like, listen, we all at some point, all of us are going to struggle with mental health.
Yeah.
And the book answer, if you follow it, yes, it'll work. But a lot of you are going to resist because you know what? You do the mission, you get it done.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. What is it? Have you adapted your teaching to help them out so they don't fall?
One of the things with EMS to become an EMR, EMT, paramedic, AEMT, all the different levels, is essentially you have to pass the national exam. The national exam is the minimum standard to say that you're competent to get a state license. The NREMT is a credential. The state license says I can work. So I teach them the book because when they sit down for the national, it's going to be one of those like, I need to answer the, but then we actually start talking about it, especially once we get past health and wellness of the EMT, that focuses on the side of the EMT. And then we get talking about psychiatric patients and mental health. And it's like, I asked them, what's the difference between a psych patient and a regular patient? They're getting better. For a while it was, well, they're psych patients or more. It's like, so a psych patient can't have a heart attack? A psych patient can't break a bone? Oh, there's no difference. We treat them all the same. I have to handle them my little differently. Kind of like you were saying, Hawkeye. Go ahead. Did that answer your question?
Well, kind of. So is it, do you then after the test, is it more of mentoring?
Given them personal experience, especially when we start getting hands-on with scenarios. I guess my student said, it's like, you play a pretty good paranoid schizophrenic. I'm like, thank you. Or I do a pretty good imitation of someone with Alzheimer's and dementia. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. But it's like, we give them the real world experience, especially when they start their ride times. So they can, it's like, okay, I see this. That wasn't in the book. Oh wait, Don kind of talked about that. There's no good way to do it. It depends on the person in the class. Okay. The last class I taught, we talked about mental health, help. The student, when we start talking about suicide, up, out, left. It's like, okay, 0 for the day for you. But it was just one of those things where she couldn't handle it. She finished the class. I doubt she's ever going to get a state license. It is what it is. And then you had a question, sir?
Yes. So you mentioned being reminded of the bad calls. Were there calls that gave you hope that you could draw on for inspiration that you found yourself turning to?
Not really, because I'm old and jaded.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the truth. Like, I'm 37 going on 60. I've got the mentality of like old school firefighters, like leap this. So when I have a patient, I'm empathetic. I'm doing all the things. In reality, it's like, oh, just shut the bleep up, because it's, because when the call's terminated, I'm done. I check out. In the back of the ambulance, I'm an absolute professional. But after the call, I did my job. You were with me for 20 minutes. You're now at the hospital. Good luck on your journey, sir. I'll probably never see you again. Did that answer you?
Yeah.
So just to kind of explore the side transition into something different. I came out of the corporate world before what I'm doing now. And every year, one of the benefits they provided to us was recertification of our first aid training. Is that something that you've done, or something? I know that the trainer who came in and did our recertifications was very well paid to do that, and it would not be a stressful environment. Probably, it may be boring for you, but it might be something to consider, because she did it as an independent consultant and made a very good living, because I know what she got paid to come in and teach 3 classes over a month at 4 hours per class.
Well, for me, it's more of, if I can teach run calls on the ambulance in the firehouse, and then they want to start their education program. Like that's where I want to be, and I'm about 40% there.
I was just curious because
Yeah.
it might be, I'm sure you probably had thought of something like that, but it
Yeah.
might be a side gig that would give you the opportunity to
Yeah.
teach and still, fulfill some of that need while being quite lucrative.
Yeah. I kind of tell students this, and I'm kind of the same way. I'm not. You're not an EMS to be rich. It's not
No,
there.
No, I get it,
Yeah.
but I just say, you do need a certain level of income to provide.
And
that
I'm
does-
there.
And that does shift the environment to maybe less stress.
Well, currently at my job, director of education, not inserting company here. If I can get rid of that and segue to something else, just more in the instructor role and running on the
Fair
ambulance,
enough. Just-
that's all I need. I'll ramen noodle and brown bag it instead of steak and lobster. I joke. I'm pretty frugal, maybe a little cheap. Anyway,
Probably have time for maybe one, maybe two more.
what do we got? Who wants to know?
Yeah. What's the progression you have to go through when you're in that moment and maybe you had a rough day, you sit down, there's a bottle there, you got a buddy who's drinking. What's the thought process, the progression
Oh,
you
you
have to go through?
rat bastard.
Because that's really the place that hits the hardest. You can right now make a decision to not drink, but
Yeah.
when you're surprised and in that moment, how do you get through that and say
If
no?
you can answer that, you're gonna be a multi-billionaire.
Well, that's just it. Everyone's path is different. For me, well, I can't really talk about it because it was a barter blanket thing. But when who were we honoring yesterday?
Marxist.
Right? When we were honoring him, and it was one of those, like, I'm looking out of the corner of my eye to see what this guy's doing. It's like, is he watching me? Is he judging me? Because as we're passing to honor him, as soon as I hit this hand, I went right there. And then it's one of those, I wanted to come over by the fire with all the music, but it's like, I'm pretty sure they're drinking right now. So why don't I just stay over here and talk to other people? That's the best answer I can give you. And it's situation dependent. I had a good friend of mine since childhood. Ironically, he's now an alcoholic and he doesn't know yet. Because he's telling me about all his women troubles, and I'm sitting in a bar with this guy, and I'm drinking tonic water with a switch of lime. We're there for 4 hours. And just hearing how much he's pounding down and drinking, the saving graces. One, his dad came up. I'm childhood friends with his dad. He was more of a father to me than mine ever was. So this man's opinion to me matters. Last thing I want him to see me doing, he doesn't even know the battle I went through with alcoholism. Is for him to hear that and see me like break that, kind of like accountability for Tim. People I love and respect, that holds me partially accountable. And then it was also one of those things too, where I know if it had been just me, I probably would have relapsed. I probably would have drank. Get him. Do you need a spear? And I had my wife drop me off, and I had my wife pick me up, knowing that she was going to be there to take me to and fro. Yeah, if it had been where she was at work or I had an Uber, I probably would have been more apt. It's like, why don't you come over to my place? You can bring what you want to drink. But then at that, once I started getting uncomfortable, it's like, get the fuck out. Yeah, I gotta really watch that. I am not afraid to tell someone, it's like, yeah, we're done here. Anything else? Okay, so ends the round robin.
I do have a follow-up to that if there's time.
Sure.
I have a buddy who's kind of like that as well. Probably alcoholic, would
Yeah.
never say he is. What's the best way to help somebody like that?
You can't until they're ready. You really can't. He's drinking his life away, and when he puts a picture up on social media, it's like, yep, watching TV, drinking vodka, and he's got the picture of vodka, no ice, straight vodka. I'm like, oh fuck, Nick. It's one of those, like, he doesn't even know, because he would be the one. It's like, sucker, pussy. It's like, until he hits his rock bottom or figures out what he wants to do, I'll be his friend from afar. I'll end with this. Jenny made mention of burning bridges, not burning bridges. I kind of quantify like this, and it came to me in her presentation. I will never burn a bridge, but it's one of those, I will give you a last chance, and then now that bridge is under construction. Yep, it's like when you decide to come around and we can talk, construction over. All right, that's all I got for you.
So lunch is next. The Hill right away, I think 12:30. So see you guys up there.
Thank you. Let's get a drink.
Water.
Huh?